Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Better Business Roundtable. And this is where we explore biblical principles, which, when we apply to our businesses and our lives, they make a change. And we are looking at that series called Transformation, and we've been looking at different aspects of it. But today, I will not be sharing, but we will have Maz, who is a transformational coach, sharing today. And just before we start, I'll just give a brief introduction about Maz. And Maz, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I know I am correct. Right. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce today our speaker. And this is Maz. Maz Alexander. Maz is a multifaceted professional whose career spans for over 16 years in adult social work and mental health. And she has served both in the NHS and in local authorities. Her experience, and she is an expert in her field, and she's dedicated to supporting individuals to just navigate mental health challenges. Now, in addition to her work, Maz is also a certified transformational coach and a mental well-being coach. So she specializes in empowering professional women who struggle with self-sabotage, and she guides them towards achieving balanced and fulfilling lives. Now, Maz is also an accomplished author who has written two books, and she's known for this particular book, Arise Kintsugi Queens. And that book really reflects her commitment to helping women to overcome the feelings of unworthiness and emotional exhaustion. It shows throughout the book her passion for really helping individuals with personal development and mental well-being. Beyond her professional endeavors, Maz also brings a unique blend of humor and insight as a stand-up comedian, speaker, and spoken word artist. Now, this diverse background allows her to connect with her audience and to engage with them in a very relatable manner. So we can see overall that Maz, using every aspect of her life, her career, is committed to the growth and personal development of others. So today, I introduce to you our speaker, Maz Alexander. Over to you, Maz.
Oh my goodness, what a wonderful introduction. At first I thought, who is she talking about? Where is this guest? I was like, oh, it's me. Thank you. See, when you put it like that, it sounds so nice. I really do appreciate it. But as I say, well, I think most of us are familiar. So yes, thank you. And welcome everybody. And yeah, aside from that, so yeah, I'm based in London, but I'm a mother. That's the most difficult job of them all, motherhood. But anyway, we won't talk about that, but we will be focusing on generally on relationships today. So before I start, let me just see, and please tell me, Janice, I'm gonna share my screen, but I want to know because I'm using a different device. I want to know if it is. I hope I was trying this before with my home computer. Let me see. Now, let me know, guys, if you can see that. Can you see it, Janice?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay. Oh,
I
good.
can.
Thank goodness. Yes. Okay, so this is what we're looking at today. As Janice says, we're continuing in the transformation series. But today's focus is on relational transformation and how we build meaningful and godly connections. So really, the aims and objectives of today are really simple. We just want to raise awareness about our relational health and well-being. We want to explore how we can connect, build godly connections and cultivate meaningful relationships. We'll touch on some barriers and some solutions to that, and afterwards we can have some questions and answers. But along the way, please feel free, if something comes up, let me know, and we can discuss that. So there'll be a lot of reflection, probably because I like to ask reflective questions. So let us start. So we know that on a basic human level, we all have a desire to connect with others. We need to be known, to be seen and understood. And this creates a sense of belonging. In fact, this is how we were designed. That's how we were created. So regardless of the type of relationships we have, when it comes to transformation, it's important to know that the change, any kind of change, has to start with us. And I say that because often we focus on changing others, and that's what I do as a coach. But often we need to, the change has to come from us, because, as you know, we cannot control the actions of others. So I want us to be thinking as we go throughout this, what our relationship with ourselves is like. What does that look like? Do we even have a relationship? And what is the story we've been telling ourselves about ourselves? And, you know, we have a story for other people, but what do we say about ourselves? And just to really examine our perceptions. Because I think when we understand ourselves better, we can understand others. So, and Brené Brown in this quote captures it really well. I think that kind of summarizes it in that true belonging only happens when we present our authentic, imperfect selves to the world, and our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance. And that's so true, because we tend to look at the world and people through our various lenses. So what we know biblically, you've heard that as a man thinketh, so is he. And I'm referring to our mindset because it affects the way we think. It reflects our attitudes and filters the way that we experience others. So it's kind of like putting on a pair of glasses. Sometimes, if you were like me till I corrected this prescription, you may have a distorted view. You can't quite see clearly. Or just like a computer, it might be that there are some malware, some viruses that you need to clean that up and reprogram the computer. So, often we have to literally, and it's work, to tell ourselves what to think. So ultimately, that's what transformation is. Transformation comes by the renewing of the mind. Now, forgive me, I've got two different screens because I'm using a different device, so forgive me. So let's move on to the next one. So it's really important to examine how we think, but equally important is our heart posture. That is to say, the frame of our heart. Now, the heart is the place where we make our decisions, and it reflects our motivations, our deepest desires. We effectively make decisions. That's where our values sit. So that's why Proverbs 4:23 tells us that above all else, we must guard our hearts, for everything you do flows from it. So, as I said, our decision making, our values sit within this domain. So we have to think, are the values that we have, are they supporting us in our relationships? Or perhaps they may be misaligned. All of this is important because it informs our skill set. So often we focus on doing and executing various things without the other two. We tend to neglect. And there's there's various sets or frames or ways of being, your soul set, and how you use your tool set, and various others. But we're focusing on these two mainly because they have the greatest impact on our relationships. So let's look, because I think there are some challenges especially in the digital age that we are, that impact the way we do life with other people. So especially after the COVID pandemic, we became used to using technology. Some were before, but the majority of the population, in terms of virtual networking, that sort of thing. And it's convenient, it's useful, it's impactful, but also it can also be a barrier because people may show up differently. You know, if you're in a room full of people, how you present yourself may not be the same. On screen, you can hide. Like me, you often don't see my face when I'm on here. It's the blank screen. I don't want you seeing actually in my house. Don't look in my house. Don't get in my business. So yeah, how it just affects the way we present. Even our businesses, we're told that, you know, we have to be visible, don't we? So that has increased how we present our services and products online, how we develop that know, like, and trust factor. And there are so many other things that can affect it, but we need to be aware, you know, it could just be cultural differences, the way we communicate, and our personality styles. We've seen even in groups like this that there's always various group dynamics at play. There'll be different kinds of personalities. Sometimes they will clash. And that's important to know because everybody's different. And we need to be mindful that having knowing what our boundaries are important. And I say that because often people don't. It's just not something they think about until the boundaries have been crossed. And it can also be just that we just don't have enough time, or we're not using the time in a way that could be effective for us. So, and this is not an exhaustive list. There are many other challenges that can impact how, you know, various things, various traumas, various historical events or environmental factors that can challenge the way that we interact with people, especially in business. It depends on the demands of the customer, of the stakeholder. And I just want to say that Myron Golden, for those of you who are familiar, I love what he says because he reminds us that ultimately we are made for creation. We are made to create, to contribute, and to connect with others. And he says when any of these are out of alignment, we don't have that fulfillment that we desire. So we may have success in other areas, but ultimately you're not going to feel fulfilled. And that's linked with your purpose, actually. So we find that some people are great at connecting. You know, they can connect, but they may not be able to sustain that in the long term in terms of presenting their services or their product. So let me just move on to the next slide. We know that relationships, the relationships we have, the ones we value, they give us a sense of meaning and they affirm our identity. And as I said, it's linked to purpose. But when I say relationship, I'm referring to the way we connect, how we interact with each other, yes. But ideally, the relationships we want to cultivate with others are based on balance, based on mutual respect, trust. And although I appreciate that not every relationship, especially in business, is not, and we're going to look at some of those relationships in a moment. And you've heard this saying that you are the average, sorry, I keep getting pop-up notifications. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, according to Jim Rohn. And yeah, there are various adages. I remember growing up, my mum would always say, you know, show me your friends, I'll show you who you are, that kind of thing. And, you know, even scriptures tell us if you walk with the wise, you will be wise, but companions of fools will suffer harm. So it's an important point to remind us that the people we associate with, and that includes family, by the way, I'm not just talking about our business, but whoever those people are, they can influence our mindset, our heart set, our actions, ultimately affecting our outcomes, our achievements, our success. So reflect, and you don't have to tell me, but feel free, you can put in the chat as we go along. But who do we attract? Who are you attracted to? You know, if you're in a meeting like this, or, you know, in a room, who do you naturally gravitate towards? Does this person share your values? And it's important to think, does the person perhaps leave you feeling lower in your mood? Are they overly critical? Or are they encouraging you? Are they pushing you to reach your dreams and use your abilities? Because actually they can see something in you that perhaps you'd forgotten about yourself. And I say that because in business, and we'll talk about transactional relationships, it does tend to be quite transactional. I remember going to a meeting and one woman, she raced around the room gathering information. She said to me, "You, what's your number?" I said, "Excuse me, do I know you? Who are you?" And what her goal was, was to meet as many people. She wanted to know, and we all do, what's in it for me. And to determine my value, she just wanted to get her quota. So she said, anyway, after, she didn't even hear when I was trying to explain who I was, what I did. She said, anyway, I've got what I came here for. Bye. I've got my 3 numbers, I've got my contacts, and that's what I can. And then she left. I said, oh, I thought, oh, I hope you don't call me. Don't call me, please. So, you know, it can feel like that. You can feel like, oh, it's a bit, and there is a place for that, don't get me wrong. But when we're dealing in the business of dealing with people, it's important that we value them, or at least demonstrate that you do. So, as I mentioned earlier, sorry, just bear with, sometimes we can be involved in unhealthy relationships. So it might mean that we need to put some distance between ourselves and the individual, the company, whatever that looks like. And I'm not talking about cutting people off or having people that only, you know, your yes people that are like, yes, you know, that's great idea. That's going to make a lot of money, when it's not, because that's deception. But I'm suggesting that we perhaps be selective about how we steward our time and our resources. Now, Darius Daniels, if you're familiar with him, he talks a lot about this in his book. It's a good read, by the way. What's it called? Relational Intelligence, the people skills you need to achieve the life of purpose you want. It's a really good book about this very topic. And he says part of our purpose is to be a relational asset, not a liability. And that's crucial. We don't want to hinder anybody. So please consider your relationships with others. How do you interact? Because it may be inadvertently. You might not be intentionally setting out to hinder anybody. And we know that the business journey, it can be a lonely one. It's often because people might not share our vision. They might not even understand it. But as I say, inadvertently, they may be a hindrance because of that reasoning. They're not on the same page. And that is why it's important to have godly connections with others, especially in business, because we're all called to serve one another. Proverbs 27 reminds us, 27:17, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. So we need that community. It can't be done alone. I know Janice often tells us, you know, about those self-made millionaires that come out, or the entrepreneurs. And actually, that when you analyze, they're not really self-made in the way they think they are. They will have had people along the way that have poured into them. So regardless, even if you're a solopreneur, we do need others. And in Matthew 5:13, we're encouraged to be the salt of the earth. So therefore, we're meant to influence our surroundings, just as salt is a preservative, isn't it? It prevents, particularly in the example of meat, from spoiling. So similarly, as a metaphor for life, we need to have that impact and, do good works. And so this concept of koinonia is what we want to cultivate within our relationships. So it's a Greek word essentially, and I think it refers to fellowship. It's about communion, and it talks about intimate connection, a shared life with each other, but also with God, with other believers. Essentially, that's what it is. In I think it's mentioned in the book of Acts, and in terms of how the disciples, they were given a new order, a new way of being, and that's what we want to try and cultivate in our lives. So essentially, we are mirrors of God's character, his love, not just in the four walls of the church, although we are the church, but in business. So, we need to have open hearts. Again, our heart set is important in this aspect. So it's about every aspect of our interactions, the way we speak to each other, how we serve, how we deliver our services. So these are ideally the divine connections we need in our lives, because we know plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. So yeah, I love the book of Proverbs, by the way. That's why there's so much. It's just a manual, so much guidance there for how we are to interact with each others. And of course, there are these people that create accountability. These are the spiritual gatekeepers that I'm referring to. So let's have a look at those. Destiny helpers. We've heard that term become popular actually in the last 20 years or so. I think these people are crucial. So essentially, destiny helpers refer to the people who've been appointed to help us on our journey. They are the people who not only support, but they will help you birth the vision and the mission, your kind of spiritual midwives, if you will. And these people, they can be rare, but they're very precious and valuable. They can help to open doors for us. They can help do, more importantly, battle in terms of the spiritual warfare that you encounter when you're elevating in business from start to finish. These are the people that will join you within that battle. And these people can come in different forms. So they may be people that we're more familiar with. It could be our friends, could be family, although not always. We have colleagues, our mentors, yes. But they might also be people who are unknown to you, strangers effectively, people actually who you'd least expect. And I say that because we need to be mindful, because sometimes we reject things that are not packaged in the way that we would expect. And often we have preconceived notions of what destiny helpers should look like. And I don't think that, for some of us, we have an image that they're coming down from the sky with a halo, talking in a loud voice. This is the way, walk in it. No, it's not always like that. It often, actually, I've found that they are. You're not necessarily looking, but they locate you. And maybe even at the time you may have disregarded them. So if we think about examples like Naaman, who was delivered because it was the maid of his wife, wasn't it, who recommended a prophet that could cure his disease. And I know Naaman thought it was ridiculous. What do you mean, dip in this one? No, why would I do that? And he almost missed out on his deliverance, on his blessing, because it didn't look like what he thought. And think about Elijah. Elijah he had Elisha, but even before that, I'm thinking of when he was in that dark place and he was running away to the cave. His destiny helper came in the form of a bird, a raven. And that's very unusual because it's not the nature of that kind of bird, or any bird, to come and bring you food and do you know what I mean, minister to you and supply your needs. He could have shooed the bird away and said, go away, what you want, you know. But I'm just saying that it looks different. And we need to be open, because, you know, God uses different people, different circumstances and events to bless our lives and to bring forth the plan he has. So let's have a look. And I want you to think, by the way, as we're going along, because I think we will have encountered these divine connections, these destiny helpers. And sometimes they only last, they can appear for a brief season. They're not there from start to finish. You'll have different ones along the way. People who have just helped you, whether in a small way or in a great way. So let's have a look at how those meaningful connections, what do they look like? How do we achieve it? And what does it actually mean? Because we say it a lot, but I think it's important to know that they are healthy. They tend to be healthy relationships. What's healthy? Well, it tends to be reciprocal. So it's not a one-way street. It's not one person having dominion over the other, you know, and taking. It's not constantly taking. So therefore, it's the opposite of that. You will have a reciprocal relationship, and you will typically have similar interests and shared values, although not always. But even where there is a difference of opinion or attitudes, you will be able to demonstrate value. You value each other, even though you may disagree. And I think a key ingredient is empathy. In any relationship, you'll be supportive, but you'll demonstrate empathy, especially when conflict arises. You know, you don't have to agree, but you'll respect one another. And when times are hard, that empathy particularly will emerge, ideally. And there should be a level of transparency, you know, and you know, because it's not always going to be sunshine. It's not plain sailing. And when times are hard, we need to be able to share with each other our struggles, our challenges, not just our wins and our successes. And it's in the sharing of these things that we can be, you know, we're developing, and that's reflected in the communication. Needs to be open. You know, sometimes we think people are mind readers, and they're not. We think, well, you should know that, but actually you'd be surprised. Sometimes you have to articulate what is it that you need. You know, what's the vision? You know, if you cannot articulate that, it's going to be hard for someone else to get on board as well. And yeah, just sharing of your thoughts, your feelings, without fear of condemnation. Because, you know, in we see this in many companies, in many businesses. You sometimes are not allowed to share a point of view. You will be silenced because you have to get on board with the vision, because this is it. And if, you know, you're a hater, or, you know, if there's any difference, but when you have meaningful connections, you're able to share openly, and the person isn't just gonna dismiss you. And yes, we talked about the showing up authentically. Yeah, no mask wearing. You can actually show up and talk about your fears, your hopes, your dreams, all of that. And the person, although they don't have to fully understand, but they will still remain supportive. So relationships are essential. They really are. They're not just nice to have, they're essential, and they determine our business success. But sometimes we lose sight of that, and we focus on other aspects of business. Now, we're in business, aren't we? Because we want to sell. We do. We want to sell. We want to change lives. Some of us have different reasons. We have different whys for why we got into the particular businesses that we have. But yeah, sales, because we are focused and sales are important, otherwise effectively, you might not have a business. So, but what we don't want to do is treat people like a number. Sorry, excuse me. We can sense often when we're interacting with people that they are perhaps treating us as a number. They're seeing pound signs, dollar signs. And we can sense, as that example I gave you in business networking, we can tell when people are not really interested in us. Even online, when the person, and this is a thing as well, often we've been at the mercy of someone who has perhaps talked incessantly in the meeting. They have assumed that you need what they are giving. Yeah. And I'm not saying we're all there to sell our products and our services, but they think they swoop down like a hawk and then they give you the hard sell. And it's very unpleasant actually to be on the receiving end of that. And I know you've had this even virtually in the LinkedIn space or the other social networking. People come in and I know you've had this, Janice, they'll tell you this and I'm like, you're thinking, well, I am a business coach. What do you mean? And had they have taken the time to actually read her profile, see who she is, they would have known that, and they could have actually targeted their services to perhaps meet her needs. But the fact that they haven't even bothered, they're not interested in who Janice is, what she does. They're just, yeah, they're treating her like she's another number. So we want to avoid that. And that leads me to talk about the types of relationships. So as I mentioned earlier, that we tend to have these transactional relationships, but as kingdom ambassadors, what we want to do is have a balance, have transformational relationships as well. So the difference is that transactional relationships, it's illustrated here in the table, but they tend to focus more on perks. It's about the exchanging, isn't it, of goods and services. It's kind of like you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. And that's okay, that does have a place. But it can involve a lot of rejection. And that can damage our working relationships. But by their very nature, these transactional relationships are short term. They tend to be short term because, that's what they are. And they do, as I said, they have their place. They're useful though for managing expectations. So if I know that, okay, I've got to bring so many followers or do so many referrals, this is your expectation and this is what I have to do. It will be good for our business. It will give us more exposure, more visibility, and it will get the clients through the door. That's okay because I've understood that. You haven't deceived me and we know what we're signing up for. But we need to know the importance of cultivating, again, that know, like, and trust factor. We need to be reputable people because every interaction we're sowing seeds. And really, that's what transformational relationships are about, because these are comprising of personal growth and shifts in our understanding of ourselves and others. And that takes time. That cannot be done as a quick kind of in-out thing. So at any stage, and also not just in our professional relationships, we can be transactional with friendships sometimes, which is not ideal. But if we want more meaningful connections, we do want to be more transformational. Okay, let's move on. Sorry, I'm mindful of the time, so I am going to just speed up a little bit now. Okay, so what exactly does that look like? And we touched on it before. So according to when we use this word transformation, but what does it mean? And it's different in different contexts, but, you know, for example, Cambridge Dictionary says transformation is a complete change in the appearance or character of something or someone, especially so that thing or person can be improved. Now, when we think about business transformation, this involves ultimately the process of changing. You're changing systems with the intention of improving. You want to achieve measurable outcomes. You want to improve productivity, etc. So that's important to keep in mind. But remember what I said at the beginning, it starts with us. So those things cannot happen without a change of mind, a change of heart. So how are we transformed? Ultimately, as Romans 12:2 tells us, it's by the renewing of our mind. We need to think differently so we can act differently. So yeah, we don't want to be conformed to the patterns of this world. So, you know, even in terms of businesses, a way that perhaps our secular counterparts would do things that is not how we would do things, because we have different goals, we have a different vision, different plans. So we renew our minds ultimately by, you know, it's about reading the word. It's about surrender, though. It's about surrendering what we thought we once knew, and that involves, as I say, surrender, but forgiveness. Ultimately, we have to die daily to our old selves, and we do that through the help of the Holy Spirit. But change often happens. It can happen instantly, but it happens incrementally. So there are stages, aren't there? I don't have the diagram, but ultimately, you know, if we think about ourselves, whenever there is a change, that we can be resistant to that. And in companies we see this, especially I work you know, when we're dealing with a public body like adult social care, particularly health and social care. Often, as I've said, they reinvent the wheel. Often they think, well, we've always done it like this, we don't need to change. So that they're not even contemplating the change. And then when they are, there's the resistance that comes, because, well, we think, well, what, this is the way we've done, we don't need to. And then you might talk about something might drive that change, like they need to make cuts to services. We need to save some money. And that would be the driver for the change. And then they eventually reluctantly get on board. And then comes the change in behavior, the change in culture. And then the transformation is eventually executed, but only, and this is an important thing, where they have come on board and accepted. You have to accept that there is a need for change, otherwise you won't. So let me just move on. In business, and this is another way of how we transform and thinking differently, because often we tend to think when we have the thing that we desire, then we can have the desired outcome, the finished product. But actually, we do need to focus on who are you, who do you need to be actually to get the thing that you want. But before you can do that, who are you becoming? Who must you be? Even before you have achieved it, because we wait, don't we? We're like, well, I'm just waiting to get this, and we don't take action. Actually, we wait. When I have this, then I can do that. No, it's actually the reverse. You work on, and this is how transformation happens. You work on, you know, whether your character, whatever it is that you're doing, you work on that, and it's internal. And that will then be reflected in your actions, and that's will bring about the change, and ultimately the thing that you desired will come to pass, because you know, you focused and you've not been so transactional and do it. And you can still have a level of success, don't get me wrong, because lots of successful people actually do not, certainly in the world, may not have so much focused on who they are and who they must be. And they make, you know, they've got 6, 7 figure, but it's about, if you want to sustain that, this is a lasting formula, actually, that we want to cultivate. And yes, there are other factors involved, but this is just a simple way to think about it. So moving on. Transformation drivers, there are various things that happen. As I said, it starts with us, but these are some here that can affect how we show up in our personal lives. It could be divorce, it could be our political climate. Something that affected us all that we never saw coming in the last 5 years was the COVID-19 pandemic. It completely changed the way we had to do business, the way we had to show up, the way our characters, the way everything actually, certainly, whether we like it or not, we had to transform. And it might be that God is calling you to a new mission, you have a new assignment, because these things are seasonal. You may not stay in one particular area forever. So yeah, these are just various things, redundancy, financial hardship. These things are catalysts for change. As mentioned, consumer or industry demands. It could be any life transition. These things will and do have an impact on our lives. And how do we manage that? There are various interventions. And as I said, through those of us who are coaches, consultants, it's what we do. We are in the business of bringing transformational, certainly in our relationships, but we see that reflected in our businesses. And just a disclaimer, transformation is needed. It's always needed, but it's not welcomed by everyone. So some stakeholders, for example, may struggle. They struggle to adapt, and they may misunderstand what you're trying to do in bringing about transformation. So it may well increase conflict within your teams, within your household, just generally within your relationships, because it can tend to cause misunderstanding. So we're coming in to the end. So let's think about how we sustain that. Once we've recognized it's important to have the transformation, we've got our meaningful connections, we've got our destiny helpers in place. It's often not easy to sustain it because distractions, all kinds of things can come along the way. And it was important, I didn't mention before, but just as we have assigned people who are destiny helpers, or whatever you want to call them, these people who help us, we also have an enemy who assigns people to sabotage it as well. So we have to be mindful of that. So that's why sustaining the transformation is important, because we will be challenged. We will have these things that seek to just ruin the vision. So we want to be seeking people and relationships who those people who see our blind spots, and as I said, that's what we do. I think all of us in this room do that. We help people to see their blind spots, to see how they can improve. We need to be intentional with it, so that's why scheduling time is important. Often we say, I'm busy, I don't have time. If you can schedule 10, 15 minutes, whatever that looks like. But if it's not scheduled, it won't get done, you see. So I like to write. I've got my to-do list. I've got, reminders on the phone, all kinds of things that I do. And I try and automate them because otherwise it just doesn't happen. Yeah. But one thing I want to focus on as well is that when we are interacting with people, whether virtually or physically, the thing that's prevalent in a lot of these meetings is small talk. Now, I'm not saying avoid the small talk, but actually, yeah, just keep it to a minimum. Ask more meaningful questions. So just be curious about the person, open-ended questions, because it's amazing what people will tell you. Let them talk. You'll gather all the information that you need. It will tell you, is this person my client? Are they not? You just let them speak for 5 minutes and then you will soon know. So ask those open-ended questions, those meaningful questions. For example, you might say to them, well, what lesson are you learning at the moment? so we have to be actively listening. We need to be present. Sometimes in these meetings, and especially if they're long, and you might be just thinking about what's for dinner tonight, and we might miss something. We're all sort of guilty. And it does take patience. It's work. But equally, I think it's important to express gratitude. You meet some people, especially if this person is a destiny helper, express that gratitude. I'm a big believer of um, saying thank you, or sending that email, that follow-up email, whatever it is, because we take for granted, we think the person knows how brilliant they are, how helpful they are, but actually they might not. It's really important. If somebody, just as somebody's given you a gift on your birthday, you say thank you, don't you? Well, I hope you do. Thank you. They didn't have to do that. They didn't have to give you time. So let's not take for granted, because time is very precious. So please recognize the strengths of those around you. Don't assume that they know. Tell them, verbalize it, write it down, however you do. Just tell them what it is you appreciate about them. And if you don't appreciate anything about them, please be quiet. Don't tell them nothing. And yeah, we can do all these things. We attend masterminds and networking events, conferences. These are great places to help with those kind of divine connections. But ultimately, we want to focus on not so much what we can get out, but what value we can bring. And you might do that. You might offer things like complimentary consultations. You might go for a coffee with the person. And when we're advising, remember, sometimes we need to ask permission, because not everybody, even though you've got something great, unsolicited advice is not always welcome. So moving on, there's just 2 more slides now. Let me see. Yeah, these are questions for us to ponder. We don't have the time, don't worry. I was going to put you in breakout rooms, but you can at the end, and we're going to end in the next 2 minutes. You can perhaps think about these questions, and in your own personal time as well, in terms of, yeah, what is our relational health like? We need to know, how do people perceive us? Because often we think we come across one way, but somebody might think these are the blind spots that we might have, because it's important to know that, because it affects how we show up. And yeah, if you're brave, I've done this exercise before, and it's amazing what people tell you. You could ask ask some trusted people who know you, not your enemy. Well, you could ask your enemies, but it could be that you ask, I wouldn't necessarily say family, because they know you in a different way, but perhaps your associates, your colleagues, your people who you do business with. You just ask, what's your experience of me like? And it could just be not a long essay, just 3 bullet points. They might say you're resilient, you're hilarious, whatever it is. It's just interesting. And when you ask 3 different people and they say different things, I'm like, oh, okay, so I didn't know that's how. It's just useful. So you could do that. I'm not going to ask you your business, don't worry, but this is just a self-awareness exercise. And yeah, just thinking about, how do we demonstrate these kingdom principles in our business? Are they reflected? If not, is there anything that needs tweaking? So yes, all of that. But like I said, we need to think about that. So these, in summary, meaningful connections, these relational transformations that we seek to achieve, is crucial for our mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being, and in all aspects of our health. This is our health we're talking about, because you've heard it said that your health is your wealth. So let us not neglect, yeah, we go to the gym, you keep physically fit, but what about the other aspects? Because we are tripart beings, and we need to remember that, mind, body, and spirit. These relationships are essential, because they increase our resilience, reduce the social isolation I was talking about along this business tree, and they provide the support we need, the help that we need to manage, the very coping skills that we need to manage adversity. And we gain new perspectives along the way. So let's see, what can we do? Yes, we need to seek wise counsel, you know. We're told in James 1, if any of us lacks wisdom, we can ask for it. We'll be given it freely. And we need to be able to receive that advice. And just remember, in summary, again, I'm closing, I'm coming to land now. Your business is your pulpit and it's our mission field. So we need to be mindful about how we steward that. How do we steward our time, our relationships, and the other resources we've been given? And ultimately, when we're secure in our identity with God, with the Creator, we can better show our relationships, because and that's true, and that's why it's a work in progress. It's something that we're constantly striving for. We never quite arrive this side of eternity anyway, because all the insecurities, the conflicts that we have would be minimized, because actually we know who we are, and God has given us the blueprint. And also it's linked with legacy. That means we're changing lives, we're trying to leave a legacy. And that's why Miles Monroe, I love what he says here, that, effectively we came to earth to answer a question God knew would be asked. You are the solution to a problem in your generation. So true. So that means it's not just about us. It's tied to your destiny. And that it might mean your immediate family, your community, but generations as well. So that's why it's so important. So this is connected to our purpose, which is always much greater than us. So I think that's the last slide. Thank you for your time today. I know oh gosh, it's 11 o'clock. Okay, thank you very much. Please feel free to share your takeaways. And if you have any questions, any statements, please shout out at me. Thank you, Janice. That's it. I'll stop sharing now. Okay. Thank you. Any questions, feel free.
Wow. Thank you so much, Maz. Thank you, thank you, thank you for a really, really, really an amazing presentation. Thank you so much. There are so many takeaways. I have 2 pages of notes.
Gosh.
So many takeaways, but I won't be long because I want to allow others to share their takeaways as well. But one thing that really, really struck and had me thinking is when you said in every transaction we're sowing seeds. In every interaction, sorry, we're sowing seeds. And when you said that, I wrote below it, be intentional, because sometimes we interact with people on a daily basis, even when we go to the shops, wherever it is. And do we actually stop and think about, how am I going to sow a seed or something into that person? And all that is part of relationship building. And then later on, you said about being intentional when you were talking about developing and sustaining transformation. And you also said something on patience. And it's funny you said that, because during your presentation, I was just remembering this guy I was speaking to not too long. I'm connected with him on LinkedIn, and we had a really, really good conversation. And he was just sharing with me about his connections, his business, and how he's got some really good connections and really good relationships. And he was telling me how much he values relationships. And he said, he told me one thing that I've learned over the years is that with building those relationships, I need patience. And he said patience was what made the difference for him in relationships. So because he learned that he needed to be patient, because sometimes that person may react some way, or it may look like that will not be a relationship. Instead of just moving on, just be patient and try to bring more into it. And he said because of that, the business has grown, the group for businesses serving all over the world, in the Middle East, all over the world, and it's just really, really successful. And that was one of the things that he said. And then you brought it. So that came to my mind with what he was saying about relationships. And then it's there you were now talking about also being patient. So for me, so many different takeaways. I won't go through all of them, but thank you so much for sharing, Maz. Thank you. And I think for me, I really need to be more intentional and really be more patient when it comes to relationship building. Thank you.
Thank
I'll
you.
stop
Me
there. I'll
too.
allow others. Yeah.
Thank
Uh,
you.
yes, thanks a lot, Mas. I'll allow others to speak. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I can see in the chat. Yeah, thank you. It's just I guess thinking about how, our daily interactions, we, you know, and yeah, me too. I need to be more patient, Janice, all of that. If you get me on a bad day, you might think, oh, I don't like her. What's wrong with her? At any given moment, might get me in a snapshot in time, and you think, oh, and it's amazing. That's why that feedback exercise is great. Some a lady called me an angel. She's like, "You're an angel. You're like me, me," and then somebody else will be like, "Oh, what's wrong?" She, So it's just interesting. There's consistency in that as well, isn't it? In terms of how we show up and not letting our um our feelings influence that, because that's why we're told to guard our heart, because everything flows from it. So yeah, we have to safeguard all of that. Yes, thank you. Anybody else have any takeaways?
Hi, Maz. Hi, everybody. Um,
Hi.
yes, there was a whole lot of takeaways, like Janice said. It was so informative. I'm so grateful for what I've heard. What stood out to me is, well, we call it koinonia, that Greek thing, and I think that's the basis of all relationships. I mean, there are people who it is really a struggle to express koinonia too, which is the love of God, and it's a whole mindset thing. If we all think that it's not really about us, as you said, and it's about serving other people, it may get a little easier. Although people, my gosh, but I mean, God loves them, and not a short. He doesn't love us more than them. So I guess it's a lot of patience and whatnot as we work with people, as we interact with people, and do this transformation thing, even in the business. You wouldn't always, as they said, Mars, wouldn't get feedback from all positive, you know. But if everybody have the mindset, okay, there is a means to this end, and I just have to adapt, that kind of thing, the transformation work would take place. But it's the resistance, boy. Sometimes we ourselves resist the people, and the people resist the transformation. you know. So it was a whole lot that you said, and I'm so, so grateful. You have to listen to it again because it was very, very valuable, Maz. You're a gem, really. Yeah. Thank you so
Oh,
much. Thank you so
so,
much. Yeah, it was well, no, it was simply put. It was well put together for everybody to understand, and yeah, I took away a lot from your sharing. So I'll let somebody else share. Thank you so much, Maz, and thanks me for Janice allowing you to share in your
yes.
capacity, in your professional capacity.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Yeah, Janice let me loose. It was a bit of a gamble because I'm like, are you sure you want me to? But
Yeah,
yes,
it was
thank
very good.
you.
Thanks. As Alison was sharing about that, something came to my mind when, well, Tina is not there, I guess she had to go. And something came to my mind just recently. Tina had to deliver a speech on not judging, and her speech was, she was talking about, so many times we don't ask, but we judge people right away. We look in the room and we see different people and we just assume that this person is whatever and that person is whatnot. And sometimes, and because of that, now we don't take that time to go and really develop that relationship with that person, or even get to know that person, or because we already made that assumption. And it is, when she was giving, I remember when she was just preparing that speech and whatnot, and I was telling her that is something that all of us do at some point, whether we are even aware of it or not, we do it at some point. And when you spoke about the destiny helpers, and it came back to me again, because sometimes we don't know who that destiny helper is. And based on our, we make that assumption, and not knowing that God placed that person there to be able to help us. But then, so we've already put on that mask, or maybe put that barrier up. And as a result, now that person cannot even pour into us, and they might be finding it difficult. And even as Alison was saying, sometimes we need to pour into somebody, but then that person already put up that barrier because they made that assumption. And because of that, now we struggle to pour into that person. And especially sometimes, I don't know if that ever happened to you, you feel God is saying, pour into that person, but that person is putting up that barrier, and you're like, God, you really sure or did I really hear? And when you're like me, where the patience level is, you find that sometimes it's just easy to give up so easily. But we don't know who that destiny helper is. And when you gave that example with Elijah and the raven, I know that God allowed, God used the raven to feed Elijah, but I didn't look at it as a destiny helper. And it was so interesting that you said that, right? Because he needed that help there. And we ourselves really need to think about the people that we interact with. Because you see, when in Hebrews 13, I think, and verse 2, somewhere around there, where it tells us about to show hospitality, because we don't know if we're entertaining angels. So it's a lot to think about, to go back and reflect on, Maz. And yeah, I think I need to be more, as I wrote down, be intentional about the relationships. And I think you're confirming something also that God showed me the other day. I went to a business summit, and there were so many people there, and all sorts of business owners, some of them multimillionaires and all of these things and whatnot. But the Lord was just telling me, the people on your table, these are the only people that you need to have some deep relationship, deep conversations with. So I spent at that summit just speaking with and it looked like we just had this little click. But that is all I felt God was saying. Don't go around. And I spoke to another guy who I told about the summit, and he came and he was excited. And he was going around looking, trying to meet as many people. And he told me, Janice, I know who I'm looking for. I know who I'm looking for. So I'm going to go around and meet everybody until I find that person. I'm like, okay, well, if that's their style today, that's fine. But for me, I just feel I need to go deep. And so I only really spent time with just two people, going deep with two people. But I felt that the kind of relationship that we built throughout the day was really valuable. So even when you said that, it reminded me of that. So I think God is using that as a confirmation as well for me about those deep relationships. So when I think about it, that's confirmation after confirmation after confirmation. So maybe I really need to do something about it.
Yes, take action.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, so we have some comments there. Dr. Riva, she said that excellent teaching, Maz. Thank you. And Tina said, thank you, very informative. Um, yeah. So
Right. Mission accomplished.
yes.
Yeah.
Uh,
And just sorry, Dennis, just to add, I know I'm mindful of the time, but yeah, just I think there are areas I don't know anybody who is great at this. It's just to be aware, because we sometimes don't think, because we're on autopilot. We just yeah, I'll talk to I'm a funny, as they say, I'm funny. I'm actually funny, and funny, haha, but funny and unprincipled, I'd say. But yeah, sometimes you mention when God tells you, you know, I know who I like and who I don't like. But it's not about me. I have to remember it's not about you. And God has told me to. I'm like, Lord, I don't want to talk to her. I don't like her. Look at her. I don't like. I'm having this conversation. People looking at who's she talking to. I'm like, no. And then I'll begrudgingly do it in the. I'm like, are you happy now, Lord? I don't like her. Look at her. Not because look at her appearance, but it's just not, you know, she might have been on drugs or something in the industry. You know, the industry I work in. So we see all kinds of people. I'm like, talk to her, leave me alone. And that person, God is so funny. He will make the person come and sit next to me, start chatting, telling the whole life story. I'm like, oh Lord. I'm like, I don't want to talk to nobody today. So yeah, he does those things. I'm like, Lord, you're funny, you know. He knows what I am resisting, and he'll put the thing right in front of me. I'm like, oh, do you have to? Now's not the time. I'm tired. You know, I'm tired. So yeah, we do need, because when we think about it from that point, because in business, like I said, we only think what's in it for me. And if we stop thinking more like that rather than, okay, who can I add value to, then it will kind of change our perspectives. And knowing that you might be the only Jesus that some people see, so we have to kind of represent. But yeah, when you don't get my good side, it's not a good witness. And I thought about some of the leaders. So when in my Bible study we were reading about some of the leaders, I was like, yeah, Moses. And no matter they beat up the people, you know, they beat them. I was like, yes, beat them, because their ears too hard. So you remember when Moses, they did the idol worship, the golden calf, and Moses, he lashed them, he beat them, in just which we'd see it's a bit extreme, but yes, they won't listen. They don't want the transformation, so we have to make them. And who was it, Nehemiah or Nehemiah? One of them, anyway. He did beat up the people because he literally beat them up. He slapped them. I was like, yes, that's what we're talking about. But no, time and place. So yeah, patience. Patience is a virtue. So yeah, we need to be, because we never know. And it's not that you and the person is going to be best friends, but God, if God can use a donkey, he can use a raven, he can use anybody. It might be that woman that you don't like, that person, Sister Beverly at church, who get on your nerves because she keeps singing off key, what it is. We have to be muted to that, because we can literally, you know, for certain things, there's a window of opportunity. So we don't want to miss it. We don't want to miss it because of our prejudice, our judgments that we, you know, we have to just be open and say, okay, Lord, I'll receive that. I don't like it, but have your way. Oh yeah, thank you.
I like that, Maz. And you know, I wrote that down as well with the donkey, Balaam and the donkey. When you were talking, I wrote that down. Came to my mind, I wrote it down my notes as well. And there you are talking about it. But you know what you said there, you remind me of an experience that I had recently where this woman, you know, anyway, it was something I had to speak to her. She was very, very, very disrespectful, and it was just it really turned me off. And I didn't like how she spoke to me. And I think for about a week or so, that thing has been bothering me. And I was like, you know, I was just angry about it. I think I was bitter. I was just, you know, I just didn't like it. And I made it very clear that I didn't like it. And, you know, one of those days I was coming from the gym and walking down the road, and then God is telling me, look, I allowed this to happen. I'm like, you allowed this to happen, you know. And he was like, if this is happening because there's a change that needs to take place, and it has to happen for you to experience that, for that change. And you know, but anyway, I was like, okay, well, whatever change you want to make, that's fine. But that woman, I just don't want to see her. And I was so angry, still angry about that whole experience. And then one of these days, God just told me, Janice, you better get over it. You better forgive her. You better release her, because she will come to you and you will need to pray for her. I'm like, ah. And then God kept reminding me, Janice, you will need to pray for her. You will need to pray for her. And I tried to imagine myself doing that, Maz, and I just could not. And it was hard. Anyway, for the past few weeks, I've been like, God, just help me with this, help me, trying to release, trying to think, and it's just, anyway, eventually at some point, I just forgive the lady. Then I think about 2 weeks after I forgave her, I met her in a different setting, and she came and she asked me to prefer if I can prefer. I'm like, so the part of me is like, you forgot that what you told me you want my prayer now. But then God just reminded me, remember, I told you that you have to prefer. So just submit and just, basically behave. So I had to just behave and and ask God to forgive me right there, even while she was talking about whatever she needed prayer for, but that I just had to submit. And the funny thing is, when I prayed for her, and just prayed for whatever it is, that woman needed deliverance, and that woman got her deliverance right there. And I was that day, the rest of that day, I was just in awe. I was like, wow. So you wanted me to help that lady to get deliverance, and you know, and I played that back so many times. I talked to my husband about it so many times, like, Lord, I just don't understand it. But anyway, so it just says that the way God works sometimes is just so weird,
Yeah,
especially
makes
with
no sense
relationships.
to us. Mm.
And with relationships and the people that you might just think. And the thing is, I had not seen her after that, and I was like, I'm so glad I'm not seeing her at all, because but and then I remembered what God had said to me, that I will need to pray for her. And I know it's some deep work he has been doing in me, because I thought I had dealt with things like unforgiveness and things like that, but I guess he had to deal with that, but it is hard with those building relationships, especially when you know that, so now if you twist it around now, I was supposed to be her destiny helper in that area, and she disrespected me so much. But look at how, God still did what he had to do. He had to work in me so that I would be able to help her as well. And I guess allow her to submit, for her to be able to come for prayer, although she never brought up whatever happened. But, anyway, the way God did it, he just it's the way. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
She became
it's
your
amazing.
destiny helper, Janice.
yes. So it went both ways, actually. Yes.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah,
That's
I
how
mean, it
he
wasn't
is.
expected.
ah, amazing, amazing. I didn't even think of it that way as well. Oh,
That's true, Alison. Yeah, yeah, you both helped each other. That's true, and God gets the glory. But you reminded me a key part of that was obedience, because that was if you were not obedient, that wouldn't have happened. So, yeah, that's a big part in leadership in general. But yeah, doing what you don't want, because God does that all the time, make us do things we just, "Oh, I don't want to do that. I'm in my flesh. Leave me alone." But thank goodness you were obedient, because it was really good. And also, like you say, it's teaching you. So I highlight that because often we think destiny helpers are going to be our best friends. They're always going to be with us. And no, they could just be there for a season. You might never see them again. You might, like I said, you don't have to like them, but they're there. And yeah, just there to whether it's to develop your character, to propel your business, propel your whatever it is. But we don't always see it, so sometimes we miss it. So yes. Oh, that's good. At least that woman, Janice, she whatever she thought of you, she knows that something happened and God used you. So that's it. Your job, your mission in that respect was accomplished. So yeah.
yeah.
Great.
Thank God. Wow. Oh dear, look at
I
us.
know the time, so yeah, that's
Anyway, oh, thank you so much, Maz.
thank you.
Yes, we really, really appreciate that discussion and that presentation, and so many things we have to go back and think about. I know for me personally, go back and think about so many bits of confirmation in there for me personally. So thank you so much for that. And thanks to everyone who contributed both in messaging and sharing. Thanks a lot. And yeah, wishing everybody a great rest of the day. It's really bright. You can see all the light in my area, in my screen. But yes, thanks a lot. And wishing everybody a great rest of the day and a great, great weekend ahead. God bless you all.
Same to
Thank
you all. Bye bye. Bye,
Bye.
Maz.
Thanks.
Bye,
Bye,
Dr. Eva.
everyone. See you.